Next is pillar number 4, which is increased metric standards. So very shortly, I'm going to be getting a guest speaker on here, a good friend of mine. We're going to introduce him in just a moment here. What I want to talk about here is increasing metric standards. This is raising your level of, because when you raise your level of commitment, you raise your income. When we talk about this, we're specifically talking about the amount of calls you're making, the amount of conversations you're having, the amount of leads you're generating on a given day, the amount of appointments you're setting, the amount of starter offers you're giving, the amount of true offers from actual buyers who are looking to make offers on properties and right, your seasoned pros, right? How much content are you posting a day? How many referrals are you giving? How many referrals are you asking for on a daily basis? Like, this is just a few of the many metrics we ask to track. When your minimum metric, when your minimum standards, so many of you here have a minimum standard of, I'm going to prospect a few times a week. And sometimes when I speak to people, they're like, I don't know why I'm not generating more leads. I'm like, okay, well, how many calls are you having? And they'll be like, well, I'm probably having something like 10 or 20 calls a day. I mean, you're making 10 or 20 calls a day. How many conversations are you having? And they're like, maybe 2 or 3. You have 2 or 3 conversations a day? How do you think that you're going to make several $100,000, let alone any money in this industry? So I'm going to bring on a friend of mine. I'm going to introduce my friend Ryan Charterina, who's a top EOS implementer. He, is a creator of systems and processes and leadership for enormous companies, right? Minimum, like really 6-7 figure, and then turning them to 8-figure, 9-figure companies. So Ryan, I'm gonna have you jump on in. So hold on one second while I jump off of here. Let me stop my share. Beautiful, Ryan. Thank you for coming on. If we can give like a little wave for Ryan, we appreciate that. This is how we round of applause on Zoom.
Love it.
Thank you for coming on, Ryan. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. I'm sitting in a hotel here in Dallas, so ignore the hotel back room.
No, we love it. Love it. So listen, thank you for coming on today. I'd love to have you talk a little bit, like we had mentioned before, on metrics and systems and processes that you found that have worked for the 7-figure and 8-figure businesses you work with.
Yeah, right to your example, right there about like how many calls are you making? What's the actions you're taking? Those leading indicators where people get stuck and where the businesses that I work with get stuck are right there. Like that 6, low 7-figure mark. They like fell into it. They did enough action to get them there. And then if you want to get past that, you want to get to the next level, you have to track these metrics, and not just track the metrics for yourself, but for your team. So I have a client they have 300 agents. Imagine trying to control 300 agents and the activities and actions that they're taking every single day. It's near impossible without some sort of scorecard metric across the entire company. How many calls do we make as an agency in this week? And then what does success look like? How do you tie that to the overall goal? So for all of you, I'm not sure the sizes of teams and the situations, but ultimately, what do you need to do every single week to get you to where you want to be in a year from now? And that is ultimately getting really, really disciplined on the weekly actions is just going to get you where you want to be in a year.
Great. So why don't we talk about the scorecard? Because I know that, like, again, he works with a company called EOS, which is one of the, the most prominent business consulting agencies in the world. And he's one of the top reps there. So I want to talk about, let's talk about the scorecard, where someone who's, maybe making 50, 100, 250 grand, somewhere right there, breaking the 6-figure range or so. How can they start tracking their metrics if they're not doing it right now with ease?
So we use a software that, like, you can look at it every single week, and you're tracking these certain metrics in your business. And luckily for all you guys, Henry just gave you the metrics. He gave you everything. You have it. It's just doing it. And so a question I commonly ask, my clients and people I talk to all the time, why are you not doing the actions you need to get you where you want to go? Really deep question. Think about it. But ultimately, you can track these things. Excel, I use software with my clients. It's really cheap, but it just gets you like, what are the main metrics I need to track every single week? And why am I not doing them? Ask yourself, look yourself in the mirror, ask that tough question, because when you get to the bottom of it, it could be a fear of rejection. It could be a fear of failure. It could be all these different things, but you got to break through it at some point.
So let's talk about, like, do you think it's possible, Ryan, to go from 6 figures to 7 figures without tracking, like, your metrics at all?
I work with business owners who, again, I work with business owners in all industries. So it really depends. Some people accidentally fall into the seven-figure range. But after that, it's like sheer muscle, and they're trying to will their way through it rather than, why don't I just think about working smarter? And then I have more time to myself, more time to go prospect even further, and then bring on other people. I think it would be very, very challenging to get into the seven-figure mark without tracking these metrics. Ultimately, everyone, like, tracking these metrics is going to save you time. You're not going to be like wandering around. I remember when I first started, my business, I had no idea. I was just wandering aimlessly. Henry gave you the things you need to be doing. It's just we need to do them.
Well, just curious, what have you found that has worked when it comes to tracking metrics? What have you found in the most successful way, like a testimonial as an example of a client who wasn't tracking, then started tracking, and what was their result?
HVAC client, they've been on the journey now with me for about a year. Coming into this, they had absolutely no idea what their marketing funnel looked like at all. Like no clue. Family-owned business, 20, 30 years. So basically they didn't know what it costs to acquire a customer. They didn't know anything. And eventually, after the year went by, we started tracking the actions that they needed to take on the marketing side and how many leads would generate, how many leads do you need to get how many pieces of closed business, and then what would that do for revenue? And so now at this point, they literally just handed their marketing guy, hey, we need 293 leads or whatever to hit our goal, or whatever the number was, to hit our goal for the year. What would that cost? That's it. And now they know exactly how much money they put into the machine to get back out. It's crazy. And now what they can go do is leverage money to then put back into the machine to generate them more revenue. Lucky for you guys, you have the actions, and your time is free, which is awesome. The time you spend is like cost that's going right back into your pocket, where many other people have to pay for that.
So let's talk about as a salesperson individually, right? You had brought up that it can be as simple as tracking metrics on an Excel document and just tracking that metrics. Obviously, we talked about calls, conversations, leads, starter leads, appointments set, appointments conducted, starter offers, traditional offers from traditional buyers, how many referrals that you gave, and how many you asked for. Have you found that if someone were to start tracking that metric, like what do they use the data for now? Like, let's just say I started tracking it for 30, 60, 90 days through this data. Now what can I do?
So you're going to get a really good insight into like how you're performing. So you're going to look 30 days back, 60 days back, 90 days back and say, all right, well, if I set 20, I'm making up numbers here. If I'm setting 20 appointments a week, you're going to start to see patterns and trends develop. And then you can actually make an influence on, well, my closing rate's about this, or based on how many calls I make, I close this much business. So then like, oh shit, well, for me to get to my goal, I need to double the input. It's all about the input. And I know Henry is keen on that, because ultimately that's all this is. It's input. How much input can you put in to get the output that you want? And for me, what I work a lot with business owners on is, what output do you want? Where are you going? Are you trying to build a seven-figure business? Are you trying to build an eight-figure business? Do you want to make $200,000? You want to make 700? What's the end goal, and when? And that'll dictate your actions.
And I love how you keep saying this. And guys, I hope you're paying attention to this card, because it's really, really, really important, which is you focus on where you want to go, right? If you want to make 100 grand, you can obviously add a zero depending on what your goals are, but then you just divide out the numbers, right? Like if I want to make $100,000, my average commission check is X, right? If your average commission check right now is 10 grand, right? That means you have to do 10 sales, right? And then how many appointments did it take, or how many contracts did it take to get the 10 sales? How many appointments did it take to get those contracts? How many leads did it take to get the appointments? And you just slowly back it out into how many calls you have to make on a very regular basis. It can be that simple. Now, what's interesting, Ryan, is what have you found for somebody who goes like, okay, well, I want to make $1 million a year this year, right? As an example, I want to make $1 million. And they start doing the numbers and they realize that it's not something that they can personally do, they themselves, right? It's like, it's such a large number that they are coming up with. What would you recommend for them? Like if you're working with a company and they go like, oh, I want to do X number, like I want to do 10 million, we've never done 10 million before. And this number that I'm coming with, the amount of calls I want to make or the amount of leads I want to generate is so big. What would you recommend for them?
I think the first thing is you need more people. There's no way. So one, you have to turn into more of a leader and a coach to your people, especially as you start to hit those bigger numbers. And it all depends on what your goals are, obviously. So if it's 10 million, how many people do you need? How many calls can they make per week, in addition to how many calls you need to make per week? So then, for my client who has 300 agents, what are the actions that all 300 agents need to take? And what's the total number of calls made for the entire agency? And so when you figure that out, And now the hard part is holding people accountable. Like ultimately, hey guys, we all want to go here. We're a team and we all want to be generating this much business annually. All right, how do we get there? And you have to become more of a leader and a coach and help them through this process. Mm-hmm. And you have to want to do that. 100%. Not everybody wants to do that. And that there's a huge point there. When you start getting into this, like, yeah, the money can be great when you start adding more people. You have to want to coach people through these things. Just like someone's coached you, just like Henry's coaching all of you through this as well. It's the same concept. But you have to do it internally for your team.
What I love that he said, and I remember, like, this is how I think through things, right? Which is not just what am I capable of, but is what can I create a team to be capable of? Because it's like, okay, yeah, it's at an extra $100,000 a year in income. Might just be taking your minimum standard from here to here, right? Like it could be that simple. But also for some of you who go, I don't want to stop at $100,000. I want to make an extra $1 million. To make an extra $1 million is really just the same simplicity of numbers. Well, okay, well, I'm making this many calls now, which equates to this much money. If I want to make this much money, I need to make this many calls, and maybe it's impossible for you to make 5,000 calls a day, or at least that was the way I thought about it. And then I realized, wait a second, it's impossible maybe for Henry to make 5,000 calls a day. But what can I do? How can I create a team, an organization that can do 5,000 calls a day with ease? And it's the same simplicity of you building your team in any direction, right? Of you scheduling appointments. Maybe it's not just you, it's building the organization around you to scale up to that point. What would you say is also in regards to processes, not just tracking now, let's switch over to processes and systems. What are some processes and systems that are like non-negotiables in any business?
So every business, so I work with all different industries, so I get to see literally everything. It's really fun. So, but in the boiled down version, there's a marketing process, there's a sales process, there's an operations process in, certain specific industries, there's finance, all these different things that you have to do as a business owner. And as your team grows, like Henry just mentioned, well, again, your role turns into more of a coach, more of a leader. You need to document these processes, and then you need people to actually want to do them. A lot of the times, and I deal with all different types of businesses, a lot of the times, business owners and salespeople are cowboys. They just do whatever they want. They're like, I don't need a process. Yeah, you do. But a lot of the times, they don't want to follow the process. And the whole point of a process is it's the best and fastest way to do it. Cheapest, best, most efficient way to do it. And everyone's energy should be focused on how do we make this as simple as possible. And ultimately, that's what you're trying to create for your team. And what Henry's done years and years of research, and what you can leverage from him is he's done it. He's been there. He knows the best and fastest way. He knows the best and fastest process in his industry. He knows it. So that's something that like you don't have to go and do that work. And it applies to marketing and sales and operations. But ultimately, like you turn into more of a leader and a coach as your team starts to grow, where you're not the ones that are actually doing the work. You're more managing the process and making sure people are following it based on those scorecard metrics.
So let's just break down what you said, Ryan. So he's specifically talking about the file flow, right? Which is from lead generator or even lead list. We'll go all the way back to lead list to closing, right? And then post closing, which is saying, do you actually have a step-by-step process from how you pull your lead list? Who pulls the lead list? Guys, I have a VA that I pay $4 an hour to pull a lead list for me, right? It doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be you. You can literally go, hey, watch Henry's videos, and I want you to pull a lead list just like Henry does. They will pull the lead list, and then you're going to teach them, hey, upload it into Mojo, which is exactly what we just talked about. You're going to upload it for me. You're going to name it for me. You're going to walk them through the entirety of the process all the way. So all you have to do is prospect the lead list. And then the cool part is that then you can even teach them saying, hey, when I get a lead, it's going to go into this system. I want you to follow up on my leads for me. Send automated emails for me. You can literally schedule out emails and text messages in your CRM system. And as you're generating this lead, now the next step is you gotten that lead. Now you have to submit an offer on it. You can talk to your VA and say, hey, can you draft a letter of intent for me with these terms? Here's my template. Can you draft it with these additional terms? Your VA can do that and send it on your behalf for $4 an hour, people. Doesn't have to cost you $60,000 a year for an assistant. They can send out your emails. Hey, I want to do an email blast. I just got this new deal. I want to send it to an email blast to all my buyers. Cool. Your VA can do that for $4 an hour. You send it out to a bunch of my buyers. Hey, here's the email list I want you to send it to. And if anybody responds, cons. I want you to star it if they have any interest. They can do that for you in your email. And then once you get a deal under contract, you can literally hire people or teams on a per transaction basis for a few $100 at closing to handle your transaction for you, so you don't really need to be that hands-on. Do you have a process for the entirety of the file flow from lead list to closing? And if you don't, how much time do you think per week, Ryan, that someone should be spending on a monthly basis on their business, not in the business?
And this totally depends on where you're at. If you get to the point where you're like high 6 figures, 7 figures, I mean, 8 figures, absolutely not. You shouldn't be working in the business at all. But I have clients who are in the 7 figures who are like, they're in parts of the business. But I mean, it really depends on it also depends on what you want.
Hold on. So let's go through the scales, right? Let's say I'm making 50 to 200 grand right now. Okay, I'm on the low end of the scale. I just got started. I'm a few years in the business. How much time should I be spending in the business versus on the business? What's the ratio?
I'd say probably 75, maybe 80-20. Because depending on your financial situation, you might not have many expenses. It really depends. But
you're saying, so hold on, 80 in, 20% on. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying at the beginning of someone's career, you should be spending 80% of your time in the business, 20% on the business, which I agree with, which basically means that you should be spending nearly almost an hour a day on the business and 80% of your time in the business, right? 7-ish hours in it, an hour on it, right? A day. Now let's just say now I'm making several 6 figures. I'm making 250, 500 grand a year or more. I'm in the multi 6-figure range. How much time should I spend in the business versus on the business?
For this business, it could be as low as 25% in the business. Depending on what you're looking for, because most of the time, this is all high majority, it's sales and marketing.
Yeah, I agree. Which is, so when you're spending time in the business, let's break this down. As you start creeping up this ladder of income, you're going to spend more and more time on the business versus in it. And when you're in it, you're spending it on, specifically, you just said sales and marketing. So while you're in the business, you're going to only be focused on sales and marketing activities. And then when you're on the business, you're working on what specifically?
So depending on how many people you have, you're coaching them, you're holding them accountable to make sure they're making the calls. You're giving them the resources they need to be able to do what they need to do. You're looking at different softwares. You're out, hey, people like Henry who've done this for years. What are you doing? What have you done? You're out networking, it's all sales and marketing. And then you try to get yourself out of the operations, you get yourself out of the bookkeeping, the finance stuff, the simple stuff. And really all your time is just making deals.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say, I'm just going to try to break this down for us. So what I'm hearing you say is that as you creep up this ladder and you're getting into the multi 6 figures, touching 7, right? You're going to be spending now, again, 25% of time specifically doing sales activities, right? Like making your prospecting calls, right? Doing all your marketing activities, which is like shooting content. I shoot content, right? And then my team handles the rest of it, where I'm doing all these sales and marketing activities. I'm negotiating deals. I'm trying to put deals in contract. I'm spending my highest dollar productivities when I'm in the business on those specific activities. The on the business activity, you're just talking about recruiting more great talent, making sure they have everything they need to be successful, constantly networking with other high-level individuals, learning what works from their processes and systems so that I can implement it in mine. Looking at my org chart and saying, what type of piece am I missing? Which staff am I missing? What operational pieces am I missing here so that my team can go to the next level and the next level and the next level? Is that what I'm hearing right now?
100%. A lot of what I do is about like structure wise, where do we want to go in the next 6 to 12 months, revenue wise? And then who do we need? So we start and we build the structure first, not the people you currently have in your business. The people that got you to where you are today may not be the people that get you to where you want to go. 100%. Very, very crucial mistake I see a lot of business owners making. You learn the hard way eventually. But so
what does that mean, by the way? Let's break that. What does that actually mean? The people who are with you today might not be the people with you tomorrow. What does that mean?
Basically, there's the concept called hitting the ceiling. You can hit it in 3 different ways, really, as a business, as a department, and as an individual. A lot of the times, so I ran an electrical prefab shop. Our COO at one point, we were throwing work at him. And at some point he capped out, raised his hand, and he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And we're like, oh, what the hell? What do you want to do? He's like, I just want to go be a project manager again. He capped out and he didn't want to grow anymore. So some people have certain limits of where they want to grow, and others will run through a wall until the end of time, which means you can't plan your business around them. You have to build your business and see if that person fits into the role that you need them to fit into. So not placing them into a role where they're like, I think they'll fit. We have to be intentional about our structure and then put people that'll fit into that structure.
So well said, which is like you have a puzzle and you're putting pieces in it and seeing if it fits.
Yep.
Right. And then seeing if that's a great fit or not. Because like, and what's crazy and say that we're going to talk about this last thing. And then obviously I know you're a super busy guy and we got a bunch of other guest speakers I want to have on here. Let's talk about this last piece. Cause a lot of these are solo entrepreneurs, which are, again, they're looking to make their first 6 figures in the business. If you're going to talk to an entrepreneur right now who's like, man, oh man, I want to freaking rock it out of the gate. I'm hungry. I'm doing everything possible to make this work. I'm on this training right now. And I'm like, I'm hands up. And I'm like, I'm coachable. Ryan, what like 1 or 2 or 3 things would you say go out and do right now?
It's action. Literally, there's no other word but action. You can think about making the phone calls. You can think about talking to people. Action. Just take action. If you take relentless action for the next 6 to 12 months, you'll be a completely different person. I mean, Henry and I will know we were both doing 75 hard right now. I'm a different person as a result of it. And it's changed my thought process on, I just need to do like little things every single day and it adds up. Number 1, action, 100%.
Thank you, Ryan, for coming on. We appreciate you so much. And obviously we'll catch up together. Thank you, Ryan, for coming on. I appreciate that. We're going to get back to the session. So thank you so much, Ryan. Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on. Ryan's a great friend and he's working with a lot of very, very successful business owners. So hope you guys got a lot of value out of the systems and processes we talked about today. Let's get back to the share screen. Give me 1 second.